I'm Ben Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 9 Episode 2 interview. We'll be talking with Emanuel Xavier and discussing his latest works, Lovely Child. Let's get to know our guest.
Yay!
Emanuel Xavier was born in Brooklyn, New York, and became involved in the ball scene as a homeless gay teen. Over a span of 25 years, Xavier has received recognition as a spoken word artist from national colleges and universities. He has been named an LGBTQ icon by the Equality Forum and has been presented a New York City Council Citation Award. Xavier has received an International Latino Book Award, Lambda Literary Award nominations, and American Library Association Over the Rainbow Book selections for his collections, which include Pier Queen, Americano, If Jesus Were Gay, Nefarious, Radiance, and Selected Poems of Emanuel Xavier. He is also editor of Habla with Acento?
Yes.
Yes. Contemporary Latino Poetry, Bullets and Butterflies, Queer Spoken Word Poetry, and Mariposas, a modern anthology of queer Latino poetry. He is the recipient of a Gay City Impact Award and the Marshall A. Gomez Cultural Heritage Award. Xavier founded the Penguin Random House LGBTQ Network and is on the board of the Publishing Triangle. The author and editor of several books, Xavier continues to read his work across the country. Xavier, welcome to our show.
I love it.
Thank you for having me.
I love it when Vance struggled. The only non-Latino on this board thing, and he had to struggle with the Spanish.
You did really good, though. You
Yes,
did really good.
Muy
Thank
bueno.
you. Thank you. But we're not here to talk about me. Xavier, you have an incredible resume. Where did the passion to start telling your story come from?
Well, I stepped into the poetry scene back in the mid-90s, and I was like one of the most unlikeliest voices to emerge and take center stage because, I had been a homeless teen and I was turning tricks and dealing designer drugs at the clubs. I was part of the ball scene, and my life was pretty much what was featured on Pose before I discovered the New Eureka Poets Cafe in the Lower East Side. And I fell in love with spoken word poetry, and I wanted to share my own experiences. And this was during a time when the scene was still homophobic. I remember competing against a white hip hop rapper that stole my jacket after I beat him in a poetry slam because he was pissed that he lost to a fag.
Oh my God.
Yeah, nonetheless.
Never mind white boy mopping from a Latino, but go ahead.
Yes, at the New Eureka Poets Cafe.
All right, okay.
But along with a few others of us, we helped change the course for the LGBTQ plus community in the spoken word poetry scene. I think the biggest highlight of my career was one of the biggest highlights of my career was being on Deaf Poetry, which was put together by Russell Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
And that was on HBO during the 2000s, and it was a very popular venue for a lot of us poets.
That's awesome. Well, we're here today to discuss Lovely Child. So if I were to see it sitting there on a bookshelf and you were there signing it and I said, "What's this about?" What would you tell me?
Well, all my poetry is very confessional, and this book in particular deals a lot with discovering my identity as Ecuadorian. For many years, I thought my father was Puerto Rican because I had never met him. My mom had never discussed him with me. And it was only a few years ago that I discovered that he was, in fact, Ecuadorian and still alive in Florida. So that prompted me to write a lot of these poems. A lot of them deal with my mom as well, my relationship to her. So it's very personal. It's very confessional. It could be a very difficult read for a lot of people, but it's an important story to tell.
Right. What would you say some of the themes are? Because poetry definitely takes themes and imagination and just plays with them.
Yeah, I think it deals with self-love, learning to to love yourself in spite of all the obstacles, and an identity, being in touch with your culture and your heritage.
Yeah. I mean, suddenly finding out you have Ecuadorian ancestry as an adult,
Yes.
that's
Yeah, I know.
gotta be mind-blowing.
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a huge shift for me personally. But nonetheless, I was still within the Latinx sphere.
Right.
Yeah,
So
Right.
right. But I know that sometimes there are delineations made even within the sphere.
yes.
So, did you have like one or two that you wanted to highlight and focus on for our conversation?
Um, the opening poem, Old Crow, has been brought up a lot. It was recently featured in Poetry magazine, which
Oh,
was
wow.
a huge deal for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was my first time being published by them. And it was a poem about, reflecting about my career as an artist and my journey. And even though I don't have, you know, many like huge awards, or, I don't think I have like a wide audience. It was about learning about what was important. Like, I'm married now, settled, I have a great life. And these are the things that ultimately are important and that should be valued.
Nice. I know you are a spoken word artist. Is there something you want to read to us, like even just a short segment, so people can get a feel for your style?
Um,
Can I ask that, or is that
sure,
too
no,
much?
absolutely. I'm more than happy to. I love reading poetry. Latinx is something between Latino and Latina, reclaiming how we are defined hombres sitting in front of lit mirrors with a table full of cosmetics, and mujeres with skin fades and ace bandaged down breasts. Something like drag queens a la escuelita and butches a café con leche, like your too cool tío that teaches you how to death drop and titi with a mustache. Something like your primo that mysteriously disappeared from the family and is never spoken about. Somewhere between when did you come into this country and brown babies in hospital delivery rooms, growing up in a country where we are told to go back to wherever we came from. Somewhere between being oppressed by whitewashed politicians that come from families that look like us and our bodies outlined with white chalk on sidewalks when we are killed. Check boxes without nuance. Something between J-Lo and Jenny from the Block, Rita Hayworth and Rita Moreno, migrating across rivers and spending all your money on airfare. Something between Vaporub and Brujeria, appreciating art by Goya and Trump-loving Goya products from Spain. Taco Tuesdays and the waitstaff and cooks at Italian restaurants, children in cages and kids bused to schools where they're called spics, teens turning to gangs for brotherhood, sisterhood, and in the hood, maricones getting gay bash, alcoholism and corona, tequila, margaritas, mezcal, somewhere between a quinceañera and a sweet 16, celebrating Cinco de Mayo and clutching your purse as brown boys walk by, fetishizing Latin lovers and sex trafficking girls who speak Spanish, getting displaced by gentrification, and they're taking over our neighborhoods. Somewhere between undesirable and undesirable, being unwanted no matter what letter closes us out, an O, an A, an X, an E. Somewhere between Vanna White and wanna buy a vowel. Somewhere between your English is so good and speaking Spanglish. Somewhere between the right to live the American dream and being a welfare queen. Somewhere between gracias to the academy and filling up our prisons. Somewhere between el pueblo unido jamás será vencido and we're here, we're queer, get used to it. Somewhere between Dia de los Muertos and painting your face white to symbolize death. Somewhere between you have the right to remain silent and silence equals death. Somewhere between telenovelas and the new one day at a time. Somewhere between Richie Valens, Cardi B. Gender fluid like White Mercado and Demi Lovato. Somewhere between Lady Bunny's favorite snacks and Bad Bunny. Something like we were here on this land first and X marks the damn spot.
Bravo. And I love, as a Latinx Latino, I my generation, we're struggling the hardest for that transition. And I love the fact that you put it squarely on the map And I think it's probably one of the most beautiful definitions I've heard for the term. I mean, growing up, I thought, I used to hate the word queer. Now I
Hmm.
embrace it because of my granddaughter. She's taught me that that is the most freeing term. So
Hmm.
bravo to your generation also for bringing that forward. I love it.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
You do us
amazing.
proud. You do us proud.
I try. I really, really try.
So, what else would you like folks to know about your poetry? Something I didn't ask.
Um, that's a really good question. Aside from it being confessional and intense, I think I've written poems throughout the years that can also be funny, that can also be very lighthearted. And I think what a lot of people find in a lot of my poetry is that even though it could be very intense and dark, there are moments of humor. You
Oh
have to be
yeah.
able to laugh at yourself and laugh at the
Mhm.
world and laugh at, you know, the the positions that you've been put into, you know.
Hmm.
Um, because that's the only way that I've persevered as an individual and as an artist. And I think that's what I want my readers to walk away with. In spite of
Plus,
everything going on in the world, you still
plus,
have
I
to.
also think that what I loved about your poem there was that you included things that are obscure to most people of your generation, from Rita Hayworth to Rita Moreno. Most
Hmm.
people don't know Rita Hayworth was Latina. That
Hmm.
Yes.
she was from it, and she was groomed to wash that out.
Hmm.
And when you go to Rita Moreno, having to wear all that heavy dark makeup in West Side Story, she tells that story about how she wasn't Latina enough, and
Hmm.
she was like, and then to have her be the one on One Day at a Time where she says, "What's Latinx? Is that like a Latin Kleenex? If it is, then it's the best." Just those kinds of play on those things, and people don't understand the nuances. Or even when Lupe is dating the guy from Colombia, and he says, bada ching ching ching, differently, and then all of a sudden you see Rino Kama goes, "Do I hear a Colombian?" Just the fact that we acknowledge each other, but yet we're still part of that umbrella of who
Hmm.
we are with from and where we're from. There are so many identities and things that you were saying. I was quirking a smile, through it, because so many things were running through my head
Hmm.
from my own life. So there's humor even when you don't expect it, because you're throwing imagery at us who have lived that. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
there's a humor in recognizing that.
Yes,
Hmm.
I love it.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important for us to be able to laugh at you know at ourselves.
Right.
And,
What I loved about your poem was you had so many references to things that white culture does recognize and has embraced, and you've shown how much more similar we are than different.
Mm.
hmm.
And that's what struck me.
Yeah.
Like as you were reading that, I'm like, I need to share this with my family because those white Lutherans don't realize how much they've embraced Latin culture.
Hmm.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Sure.
I'll be gentle.
Take it away, Baz.
Okay, in this year of diving deeper, what is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Some people might associate poets with alcohol. And as much as I adore the likes of Dorothy Parker, I might simply have to say, I'll have a tropical citrus vitamin water to keep hydrated.
Yeah, that all works. It all helps. All right. What books did you grow up reading?
As a kid, I didn't get to go to the movies much, either because we were poor or I had no friends, or my mom and her boyfriend were simply not interested in entertaining me. So I ended up reading a lot of film novelizations instead. And this was way back when you had to wait about a year or so before the movie likely made it to television.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, who's been the biggest supporter of your writing?
I worked at a gay bookstore in New York, A Different Light, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there was one in San Francisco and
Uh-huh.
LA,
That's where I
and
lived for many years. So I know. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a lot of LGBTQ plus literary icons that encouraged me to tell my story. People from Leslie Feinberg to Sarah Schulman to Christopher Bram, Jaime Manrique, Felice Picano.
Oh,
I suppose I was blessed to have that community as my support system.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, are you a morning person or a night owl?
I used to fancy myself a night owl when I was much younger, and I was a club kid out on the town. I wrote a novel once called Christ-like that seemingly explored that darkness, but I'm more of a contemporary vampire these days because I enjoy the sunlight.
All right. Do you sparkle?
Yes, I sparkle.
All right. What's your favorite hobby outside of writing?
Um, because I don't get much of a chance to do so these days, reading is fundamental. Some of my favorite authors include David Sedaris and
Mhm,
Augustin
mhm.
Burroughs.
Yeah.
I like funny short story collections that distract from the intensity of my.
All right. Well, has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself?
Yes, I get to look back at some of my earlier work and remind myself of where I was when I wrote those poems. Many of them are like time capsules, but that's why I started writing. I wanted to capture the world around me, personal history, because I wanted to inspire others to share their experiences. It was about being visible, especially at a time when very few, even within our own LGBTQ plus community, care to include, you know, homeless or people of color or trans people.
Excellent. Okay. If you were to write a spinoff about one side character, I don't know if this applies to you, which would you pick?
Yeah, I write poetry, so I don't know how that would apply to me.
Right.
However, I did write a novel, Christ-like, which is sort of a classic. And much like some of the poems in my latest collection, my mom was a recurring figure. So I could see people interested in her because she's a very complex character.
Aren't all Latina mothers? I mean,
Yes,
really? I mean, come on.
yes. Everything from the
There's a
hug
reason
to
why
the
women drive.
chancla.
Yeah, right. There's a reason why women drive the whole culture. All right. Have you ever traveled as research for your work? Like, did you go to Ecuador? Have you been yet?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were just there recently. Um, and I've been able to travel to perform like in Belgium, Paris, and other countries too. But I've never purposely written, like traveled for research for a book, but I've definitely written about my experiences while traveling.
Nice.
Excellent. All right. And finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a book?
Well, I've had everything from like a decadent like book launch at a popular gay nightclub when Christ Like was first published in '99 to a quiet reading signing at a local gay bookstore for my latest poetry collection, followed by
Nice.
a fabulous dinner with friends, of course.
So, which do you prefer out of them?
Yeah. Which was your favorite?
Um, I like the newest. I like the newest edition, the new era, where I can go out with a small group of friends and really enjoy a great dinner.
Nice.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, you made it through the list. See, wasn't so hard.
Bravo.
Thank you.
So, what are you working on next? What should people expect from you?
I'm on the board of the Publishing Triangle,
Mhm.
and I hosted the Publishing Triangle Awards last year, and it was a huge success. So I was invited to do so again. It's going to be at the New School in New York City on Wednesday, April 17th. You can
Nice.
follow them on social media to keep updated. Also, I was
Do
interviewed by all. Yes,
do
what was I
do they live broadcast the awards
gonna
anywhere?
say? I believe they did. They did live cast it, and the video is actually up on, their site, which
Okay.
is publishingtriangle.org. So
Perfect. That way people can find it and wait and watch for the new one.
Right.
yes, and I was saying that I was interviewed recently by Hugh Ryan, who's working on a book about the history of the queer art scene in East Village. So excited about that because aside from being one of the first openly gay spoken word poets to emerge from that scene, I have a lot of history of the East Village. Angie Extravaganza was known from the documentary Paris is Burning.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And she had an apartment there and made it a safe space for many of us underage homeless kids. I suppose you could say she was like the original Mother Blanca from Pose.
Right. Did you belong to a house? I'm sure most of our listeners and viewers are wondering.
I was loosely involved with the House of Extravaganza, and they'll always be, a part of me. I did, with the help of Willie Ninja, who was also in Paris is Burning. I started the House of Xavier, which was more of a poetry house.
Oh,
so we would do events called the Glam Slam, which was like a poetry ball, and we would have categories like best verbal vogue or best erotic poetry and sexy underwear or lingerie, and we did this for like 10 years. It was a great event, and they even picked it up and started doing it in London for a while. But it just became overbearing. It was just a lot.
It becomes a monster on its own.
Yeah. But yes, so I would say House of Extravaganza and House of Xavier.
All right, excellent.
Love it. And it sounded like I interrupted you. Was there one other thing you were working on?
Yes, I'm collaborating with Richard Clark, who is a composer, and he previously set classical music to some literary work by Kurt Vonnegut. He reached out to me about using some of my poems, and I'm excited to hear what he comes up with. I've done poetry to music in the past, house music, which can be found on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you download music. Most recently, World Out There with Irvin June, who is a producer from London. However, this is an exciting new approach that could potentially reach a whole new audience.
Yeah. Well, where is the best place for people to follow you, find these past works, and keep up with future works?
Definitely my site, EmanuelXavier.org, 1M. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm not on TikTok.
Good for you.
Yes.
The Chinese don't need to know any more about us.
Yeah, it's more about who owns Elon Musk.
Right? Yeah, well, yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm sorry, I am on TikTok. I'm not on X.
You're not on X. Okay, we got it. Okay.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, so you're where the children are. Gotcha.
Yes. So yeah, definitely look me up on social media and definitely pick up a copy of Lovely Child.
Yes,
and
for
my previous work.
Listeners and fans who support small presses, rebelsatori.com is the publisher of Lovely Child.
Yes.
We've had Sven on the show a couple times, so please support your small presses when at all possible.
Please.
Absolutely. And your independent bookstores.
Absolutely.
All right, Emanuel, any final words of wisdom?
Just be true to yourself, and hoping everyone has a wonderful 2024.
Bravo. Folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Emanuel Xavier for joining us. Thank you so very much. And thank you for putting your work out in the world and saving it for future generations.
Right, thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Our extreme pleasure. I'm so glad you signed up. All right, folks, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you like what we're doing, subscribe, hit the bells and whistles, follow us on YouTube. There's more going on there every single day. Baz is adding new content. We hit our 500th subscriber, so we actually get to do more fun stuff now.
Who'd have thought?
I know. All right, like, subscribe. The show was produced by Road Ravens Media, so for our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
All right.
Oh, what's there? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.